What is true love? It is love that is unconditional. From this Jewish article on love, honor, and the quality of love between men and women in general, and between husband and wife in particular, we find, when we scroll a little bit further down, that when we are dealing with a type of love called conditional love, it's true that, generally speaking, one loves another because of the particular positive traits and qualities that that loved one possesses. That style of love is termed conditional love, where the lover is not so much loving the person himself, the actual soul of who you really are, but you're merely loving the particular qualities that that person happens to, and they use the word possess here, I would even say possess, the particular qualities that are being manifested at that particular point in time, transiently. You might not love the person in 5 minutes because of a sudden change in the hologram, if you will, that appears. But an unconditional type of love is the type of love where you love the person for himself, for his actual soul, and not for any of the positive traits and qualities that the person may happen to be showing at the particular time. This is the true kind of love. It truly is the true kind of love. It goes on to draw the analogy between this type of unconditional love and the physical act of embracing someone in a hug. It says that, moreover, embracing involves an action that makes it impossible for that one's beloved person to depart from him. That's right. Embracing is a physical enclosure of sorts, to wrap around and embrace lovingly, to feel that person and to give your love to them by feeling. His love is so strong that he embraces and encircles the loved one with both hands, holding that person who he loves closely and not permitting him to leave. Such an intense degree of love exists only in an embrace and not a kiss, they add poetically. These two special qualities of an embrace, unconditional love, that's right, and preventing his loved one from departing, are contingent upon each other. And very astutely they further proceed to state that only when one loves the person for himself as he actually is, and not for his positive traits and qualities, i.e., he loves him unconditionally, will his love then be so fierce that he will prevent his beloved from departing. Guess what people won't do with you by instinct if they don't truly love you? They won't even hug you. You know that over the course of my whole life, I never got a single proper hug from my own mother. And now think about how rare that is. If you had 100 people off the street, or 1,000 people off the street all over America, took them and selected them, how many of those 1,000 might say that they too did not receive plentiful hugs from their own mothers? Well, most mothers tend to be alive when their kids are growing up, and most mothers, when alive and present, virtually all of them actually, will sufficiently hug their own kids. Well, let me tell you, I bet it would be safe to say that fewer than 50 to 100 out of those 1,000 would be able to state that I didn't get sufficient hugs either. That's right, less than 1 in 10, I bet. Possibly less than 1 in 20. So, If that leaves us with 50 to 100 out of 1,000, let's look more closely at those 50 to 100 people. Guess what? If you were to look at why their mothers didn't hug them, the vast majority of those would tell you it's because my mom was not around. It's because she died when I was young. Or it's because she ran away or was divorced from and lost custody or had another. There's some circumstantial splitting off within the outer circumstance that caused for it. It's worse if she's actually there and could be giving the hugs but isn't giving them. And it's so much more rare that probably out of those 50 to 100 that were left out of the original 1,000, maybe 5 of them or less would say, oh, nothing was wrong. She was here my whole life and raised me. Just didn't want to hug me ever. Okay? 5 out of 1,000. That's less than 1%. Now let's go back and make one point clear. It says, embracing involves an action, just as unconditional love involves a manner of being and of treating that person, such that it makes it impossible for his beloved to depart from him. Why? Because what are you doing when you're hugging someone so tightly? Or in Polish, you might say, uściskać, very like tightly wrapping around to squeeze, like hugging. Yeah? You're making it hard for them to leave because you don't want them to leave. That's what unconditional love is all about. And when you truly unconditionally love someone, what is also always true when unconditional love is present is that it is also absolutely true that you do never want to have that person be apart from you. You'll never get tired of them. You never want to cast them away. They're always best for you when they're close. By instinct. So, therefore, we extend the matter logically and then ask, well, if that's true, then in what situations can it be? In what situations can it be that, or what's going on behind the scenes, so to speak, energetically in the framework of the situation, when at the manifest level you do see that a person is being cast away, ignored, left alone on purpose, or people from the outer circumstance are coming in and looking in and saying, hey, are you really ignoring your husband, wife, son, aunt, mother, nephew, brother, sister? It means unconditional love is absent. It means you do not have unconditional love for the person. So, the next question is conditional love versus unconditional love. We know the difference. So now the question is, when is each one owed? And by whom? And under what circumstance? You see, a husband should love his wife, a wife should love her husband. Do they owe each other conditional love or unconditional love? Here the answer seems pretty obvious. You might be in trouble if the only thing morally owed was conditional love. Therefore, that would then excuse you running to get a divorce whenever you felt like it, because you simply fell out of conditional love. Why? Because it was conditional. As soon as the qualities stop manifesting, the ones that you happen to love, now you have the excuse. Irreconcilable differences, we'll call it. It's not irreconcilable differences. We call that conditional love. We say, I loved you. Oh, I thought I did. I did yesterday. I don't today. See ya. I never have been married outright myself yet. God willing, you find the right one someday. But I have been in relationships enough that I understand the concept. And it is a markedly different thing to love someone for the traits they show versus to love someone as a spirit. Your actual you. And it doesn't matter what behaviors you're doing. I still love you. The person inside. The one in there who's behind all of the things you're doing out here, which are separate from you. What you do is separate from who you are. Now they say this. By the traditional sense, there's a distinct moment of conversion that happens. Okay? Say a young Jewish woman and a young Jewish man start dating. What happens? Right? They say ideally you have a chaperone. Guess what? As a moral thing, there's reasons why it's appropriate and why not having one, as many rabbis will agree, why not having one is not an outright curse. Look, people in this world, in the secular world, and all throughout history have gotten together without a chaperone during the dating process. Okay, in the absolute sense, a very small proportion of human beings on this earth even do this. But it doesn't mean that it's without a purpose. And there is. I'll get into it a little more deeply sometime soon. If I'm reminded to again, when I come across the issue. It's interesting and involves a little deeper analysis. But anyway, here's the thing. In that culture, just as it may be true in human nature generally, what's true? Number one, the woman has a right to choose, which means for sure at any point before she says, yes, I'll marry you, she's allowed to stop dating a guy. Of course she is. Free will. She's not a slave. She's not your slave yet if you haven't married her. Of course, a joke. Really, the guy's the one who becomes a slave. But, the point is, she can decide at any point that she wants to whether or not she wants to continue relating to that particular individual in the romantic manner. Technically, it therefore is what you could call her privilege outright. While they're dating, they could be falling in love. Let's not be shy about the word. They could be loving each other very quickly. In that more superficial, transient sense. Oh, what's that sense called? Oh, that's called conditional love. That's right. They will start conditionally loving each other. That is, they're assessing the traits and qualities about each other. And once they find out that they enjoy what they see, they are falling into conditional love. Very nice. But of course it's conditional. Because if they're still in the evaluation process, and either one of them starts to feel differently about each other, or really this alternate excuses or reasoning or cause for cessation of dating, this is really more appropriate for the earlier stages of dating. You shouldn't do that if you're 6 months in, but one particular rabbi, I've watched a lot of his stuff on YouTube. Remember him making a good kind of example, and it's a funny one because, in fact, funny enough, I could relate to it myself. He said, listen, you could stop dating somebody just because you don't like the shape of their fingernails. Funny enough. Once I used to be a real big dater too. I dated many women. Not many, but many. One of them, I stopped dating because I didn't like her fingernails. Sounds like a jerk, right? But you know what? Women, it's your privilege too. The point is exactly this. It could be any reason at all. Moreover, you don't have to even say that that's the reason. But it is your fault. The defect isn't in her fingernail or his fingernail. It's that your brain isn't structured sufficiently to accept her the way she is. That's why you still owe the apology. You say, I'm the one who's sorry. I can't date you any longer. Why? Listen, I am sorry. Don't do the inversion game, which is the first true moral sin of that engagement, which is, or rather, that paradigm, the breakup paradigm you'll instill within that dating scheme by saying, oh, you'll make up something, especially women. Oh, he's just not so, oh, you're bad. Oh, just start ghosting him, right? Make it as if he did something wrong, even though you know he didn't. It's just because you don't like that fingernail of his. No, no, no. It's all backwards. But anyway, regardless, as long as you're being considerate of people, there's a right way to go about things, but it's still your privilege to go about it that way. However, the privilege to weave in and out of conditional love ends as soon as, in the Jewish paradigm, and as soon as you're under the chuppah and it's official. You're married, boom. In the secular world, same thing. Christian world, same thing. You're married, that's a husband and wife. That's a marriage paradigm. What then? It's a contract. Previously, it was conditional because you didn't owe unconditional love. Now, forever, you morally owe it. Okay? Women, let me ask you. Your fathers who raised you at home, especially those of you that really were daddy's girls and loved your dads, can you go divorce your pop? No, of course not. That's my father. He'll always be my father. That's right. You happen to be blood related, so that's easy. You'd say he happens to be my father. He is, and that's why you'll never, by proper moral ties, you'll never cut him out of your life. He would have to do incredible things to warrant this. And by the way, if you did incredibly bad things too, would you even still ever insist that your dad should have a right to cut you off one day? Or you should say, no, something more still is needed here. The true, unconditional love. My God, I shouldn't be able to do anything bad enough that would make my own dad look down on me like that, or for guys particular and the moms. No son in the world should say, well, it's even more sensitive with sons and moms, because the son, once grown, is a man properly, who is in terms of the yin-yang paradigm, he's a yang entity. He's a domineering boss there, and the mom is yin. Okay, so which one reigns in that case? Is it seniority, or is it the yin-yang paradigm where we know yang reigns over yin in the active sense? Here's the truth. Generally, parents owe unconditional love. But there's a paradox within this paradigm. You see, God is both yin and yang mixed together. In fact, he could not have created this universe while maintaining singularity. That's why he had to split himself into dualism, into the dualistic principle, to have all things come out from there, day and night, man and woman, good and bad, high and low. Duality is the framework of this universe. Not the only one, of course, but it is one that's active. So, therefore, what's true is this. God has both yin and yang qualities at the same time. He's the master source. In fact, it's a convention of language that we say he, and a little bit of a Christian-based misunderstanding at the practical level. Most constituents there do not actively keep in mind that God is without gender or is gender neutral. God is gender neutral and genderless, in that he's both genders. Shouldn't be even saying he. Yet it sounds disrespectful to call the God force an it. It's as if to dehumanize God, which cannot be done. So we say he as a catch-all. He's the only he where it's not a he strictly. Capital H, right? The supreme he, which is the big it, big force. God is merciful and God is just. Mercy is a yin quality, graciousness, flexibility, free giving. God's also just. Strictness, holding to account. That's a good thing too. See, they're both good. They each have their places in the fabric of reality and how things work. But when it comes down to people, we're not as omniscient as God. We become specialized. That's why almost all of us human beings are not born with both sexes and both genders. More often today, although there's reasons for that are not strictly natural, if you get down into the details of it and the science and what's going on biologically in the world today. And certain people like to joke, but maybe they're only half joking or less. Chemicals in the water. Who knows? Not important for this conversation. But the real point is this. Most of us are specialized in the gender we manifest as. So the man is born a man, so he can't be as good of a woman as he can be a man. And the woman, being born a woman, is a much better woman than she is a man. There's a reason for that. Okay? Why is that? Well, it's more efficient in nature. I'll tell you why. Obviously, we recognize that if we have 20 people spontaneously formed up in nature or in the wild, or maybe in a basic tribe or community in the old world, and one of them is, and for whatever reason, the rule of the game is the human beings need both bananas and oranges in order to survive. But to grow bananas versus to grow oranges requires two extremely different skill sets. So much so that almost the entirety of your being will dedicate towards doing one of them very well. But it's very rare that within our limited human natures, you'll be like a godlike dynamo that can easily do both. There's exceptions. There's avatar-like individuals who can wield all four elements at the same time. And you know what I'm talking about. If you've seen the show, you know exactly what I mean. But in nature, 99% of people can only fire bend fire or water bend water. Okay. Therefore, is it more efficient to have 20 people each become half as good at growing bananas and half as good at growing oranges, and then all 20 sit there together with half good oranges and half good bananas? We've all taken economics in high school, guys, and even more advanced economics in college. You know the answer to this question. If you take 10 of them, specialize them in bananas, take the other 10, specialize them in oranges, and then pair them up to trade, everyone wins. Better. Every person in that setup is made more whole than the other way. Okay? The same thing holds true for the duality of yin and yang, of male and female. So now, back to the question of love. Conditional love versus unconditional love. Well, in some sense, I'm going to tie it to yin and yang, where we may state that the quality of unconditionality to love, or of love, is more of a yin or feminine based paradigm than of a masculine based paradigm. Is that true? Well, let's think. Sons, listen. Those of you who have your parents and knew both of them, well, think of mom and dad. Now, if you had a normally energy, gender balanced family, it's the easiest example in the world to understand. Which of your two parents would love you unconditionally or less conditionally? Oh, mom always loved me. Of course, that'd be the answer normally. I happen to be an extreme exception to that rule. For me, it was almost different because, God puts us all in unique situations, sometimes in different capacities in life. But a normal paradigm, you say, mom would never stop loving you, even if you murdered 50 people in public, got sent to jail for the rest of your life. Who is visiting you at jail every week? Mom. It's like without a question, if you have a normal one. What about dad? Oh, dad still loves you. All right, but you always feel it. No, why? Because I'm not living up to his standards right now. Oh, exactly right. And therefore what? He's changing the way he relates to you. That means what? Oh my God, it's almost as if there's a conditional aspect to it. There's an underlying unconditionality of the love, but he won't express it outright unless I'm really being successful in his eyes in the way that he will accept me. Then he pours it on. Great. Mom? Oh no, it's the opposite. There's nothing I could do to lose her love. It's always there. Yeah. God himself has both aspects at the same time. We understand God loves us unconditionally. And on top of that, God also loves you conditionally and rewards you when you do good and withholds rewards and turns his face away from you when you do bad. Both things are true paradoxically at the same time. But in order to make his essence of that paradox truth more effective in the manifest world, he had to split himself into two, into mother and father. He could not just be one. That's why I have mother and father, your creative sources. Mom, when it's your child, your son in particular, you love him unconditionally. Sons, of course, fathers love you, but there's a degree change to that goes naturally. Okay, if mom is doing the degree change, something's wrong. Something's wrong. And of course, if dad loves you no matter how bad or not right you are, also something's not quite right. It's seen as weak. It's felt intuitively as weak. We know that. And women and men who are pair bonded together, courting, potentially marrying, well, you have aspects of both. See, pre-marriage, it's yang love. It's I love you right now, and at any time we can play with the variables and change them, you see, because you're all still under the test. After marriage, by what's fully morally, perfectly ideal, you will never transgress that. So, just like I said, women, can you go divorce your father? No, of course not, right? Can you divorce your children once you have children? No. Really, in a funny sense, once you have kids, even though your spouse is your closest person, but your children are just as close, if not closer. Another beautiful paradox of the universe, right? Because they're yours in a sense that even your spouse can't be, although emotionally your spouse is what no one else can ever be. If you can't divorce your kids and you can't divorce your father, you can't divorce your husband. You can't divorce your wife. Although there's a slight exception to that, and again, we apply the old traditional rules to understand why these things are so. Women, You can't divorce your father. You can't divorce your son. You can't divorce your husband. It's the same principle extended to the third leg. The husband's not the exception that you can change him out whenever you want, like a spare tire. But the rest of it's like the car itself. I can't change that. That's my car. No, no, no. They're all your car. They're all your framework. It's family. Very important. And yet, there's a little bit of a irony there and a little bit of a one-sided balance there. For in ancient Israel, we found out that, see, adultery is a funny term. Adultery can only occur with a married woman. Married man doesn't commit adultery. That's not the definition of the word. Married man can commit fornication. You can't commit adultery. The marriage lies with the woman. A cheating woman will break it. And there's reasons why in the old paradigm, it was 2 people got stoned to death when that happened. And there's reasons why it was 2 and not just 1. After that, they got a little more relaxed with the rules, and over the ages and the centuries, you just divorce, right? Either way, it's the same thing. Whether the person was killed physically, or whether they were divorced in such a way that, really wasn't just so simple as to say divorce. It was really, you were banned from the community because it was a moral transgression of the most severe kind. You didn't divorce and then just hang out. You were exiled, effectively. Okay, so whether you're dead physically or you're dead to them figuratively, as in when you say in English, i.e., you're dead to me. Doesn't mean I'm going to kill you. It means I don't know you. It means I don't even recognize the fact that you exist. Which is how closely we're related to each other from now on. Okay? We scroll down a little bit more on this page now to a new section, a little further down. Since the unconditional love is an outright love of the actual person himself, it will endure under all circumstances. Come what may, whatever his beloved may or may not do, will not add to or detract from his love, which remains steadfast. For since it does not depend in any way on the particular qualities and traits that the beloved possesses, yeah, exactly right. Exactly what we said before. There's nothing that is capable of diminishing this love. Back again to the moral standard. What did we agree is the type of love that a mother, for example, owes the son? Conditional love? No, the gut says, well, no, because conditional love from a mother to her son would be insufficient, is not enough. That is not a strong enough love, because if both of your parents combined is the representative of the God force within your life as you're growing up from them, God's only ability to manifest his yin-based qualities in your life from the parental set that you have would be naturally through your mother only. If your mother's not doing it, you're not getting it from anywhere else. If your mother isn't giving you unconditional love, no one else on this planet is. So you just got cut off from God. Because you're now not with everything else held constant. Really, you're being cheated. That's without merit. You're being cut off from God's expression of unconditional love to you in your life. That's supposed to come. If let's say you're a regular person growing up, a male, say a son growing up, it's supposed to come from 3 places in your life. When you're young, the unconditional love comes from mother. When you're a grown adult and going into middle age, the unconditional love comes from the woman, the wife. If she lives as long as you, usually they do, that's where you always will get it. And then the third source, well, it's a little bit challenging. It's let's acknowledge the truth here, guys. Do children owe parents unconditional love? Only a conceited parent would think, yeah, they sure do, and they had better. What's the real reason? Or what's the real answer? It's very interesting, because when you go into the Bible, you're going to find that God is commanded by a lot, people rather are commanded by God to do a lot of loving. You're commanded to love your neighbor, love your spouse, love your brother, love your enemy in some cases, depending on what paradigm you're using and subscribing to. There's one class of individuals that, very notably, you are not commanded to love. God has never commanded you to love your parents. He told you to honor your parents. And that is slightly different from obey, and it is even more different from love. God cannot command you to love your parents, because often enough, parents can be imperfect and quite simply unlovable. Within the parent-child dynamic, you further split into gender, so mother to child, father to child, child to father, child to mother, mother to daughter, mother to son, father to son, father to daughter. Many ways to split that up. The yin parent to the yang son is the only one that's unconditional. And then with a yin child, that's a daughter, to a yang father, parent, the father, is unconditional at the most core level. Only very slightly less unconditional, but still generally unconditional, is again the parents' love towards the children generally and towards the same-sexed children. The reason that is, funny enough, Christ in the New Testament makes a very spot-on distinction in the wording, very well written out actually, differentiating between the kinds of conflicts you will have between a different gendered parent versus conflicts with the same gendered parent. Basically, in the traditional way, within the yang domain, yang will feud with yang. Father can be disapproving of son, right? It's very strange if father's disapproving of daughter. It's not right. Same thing, a mother will be disapproving of a daughter and they'll get into their own little womanly fights. Mother shouldn't be disapproving of a son. That's also just by the gut. That's not right. Both of those types, father to daughter, mother to son, a disapproval would be inappropriate, is not fit. They're not fit to be disapproved of by you. They're only fit to be loved. It's not your place to be disapproving of them. You don't have that license. But the child owes no love to the parent. That's why when they do give love, it's called conditional love. Exactly because that parent happens to be earning it. Good for them. That's a blessing to them. Because, as this article says here, I'm going to scroll in just a second. After all, who is honored? He who honors. For indeed, those who honor you, you do tend to honor. Isn't that true? And those who despise you tend to be dishonored in turn by you. Isn't that true?